Holy City Center Radio. It is episode 309, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Friday, November 1st, 2024. Yes, November is here. I hope everyone had a good Halloween. If you have kids, hope they had so much fun, loved their costumes, and got all the candy they wanted. I hope they all had a blast. If you don't have any kids and went out, maybe, I hope you had fun. And if you stayed home, I hope that was a blast for you as well. Regardless, if you're looking for some plans this weekend, go to holycitycenter.com/calendar, and you can see everything that's going on in the Charleston area, not just this weekend, but beyond as well. Been a quiet week in terms of, I didn't go do anything, try any new restaurants, go to any events, so nothing to report on. Been, quiet, just working and, normal kind of stuff like that. So no stories or anything of that nature, just a normal episode for you today, getting you caught up on the latest news. Well, I did do one thing. I did vote on Thursday on Halloween. I took part in early voting. I went to the library on James Island, where I was in and out in 5 minutes. I didn't even have to wait in line. Like, I walked in the door and I was immediately directed to someone, checks your license and has you verify your address and all that stuff. I spent more time, having to actually do the vote itself, not because I was, thinking about my vote. I'd already decided who I was voting for in all the races on the ballot, and, the questions they also asked about, like, the county tax and et cetera, in the possible change to the South Carolina state constitution. It just, there's a handful of, 10 to 15, if that, things you have to click on. And that took longer than the rest of the experience, so I was very happy. Early voting is great. I love that we have that here in the state and obviously all over the country in different capacities. So I did do that. Don't forget that you can early vote as well. However, when you're listening to this, if it's November 1st, Friday, I believe that is your last chance, because Election Day is Tuesday. So then you'll be kind of at the mercy of whatever the lines are like on Election Day. And I would imagine, despite the fact we've had a ton of early voting, I would imagine the wait is going to be pretty extensive. But make that plan to vote and get it done. And without any further delay, let's get into the news. Charleston County Council on Tuesday voted to approve its participation in the Union Pier tax increment financing plan. We talked about this before, that tax increment financing is also known as TIF, T-I-F, and we'll get back into what that is for those who need a refresher. Charleston County Council on Tuesday approved its participation, and that came a day after the Charleston County School District voted to do the same. County Council, it wasn't even a close vote, unlike the school district one. County Council members voted 8-1 to approve the measure, and it took less than 15 minutes of debate for them to do so. The only holdout was North Charleston Council member Henry Darby, who said he would support the project if some revenue were set aside to help residents that currently live around Union Pier, to help them pay for their property taxes, which could skyrocket after the redevelopment. I think that's a good reason to vote against it. I think he makes a good point, and hopefully something will be done to ensure that doesn't happen in the future. So by participating in the TIF, the two public bodies, school district and county council, will waive any new property tax revenues generated by development on the site for up to 30 years. Those gains will instead be deposited into a bank account that's controlled by the city of Charleston, and it'll fund public infrastructure projects within the designated zone. So for 30 years, no new property tax revenues will be going to, the county or the school district, which if the Union Pier wasn't developed, they obviously wouldn't have got anyway. But that revenue instead will go to help with public infrastructure projects, which, is certainly going to be needed if this Union Pier development is as big as it potentially could be, and the amount of people that it could bring to that area, whether living if they build apartments, condos, whatever, as well as obviously anybody going there to, visit a restaurant or a business that's built there. So with both the county and the school district agreeing to the TIF, the plan returns to Charleston City Council now, not the county council, City Council, for final approval. The Union Pier project is set to bring in about $47 million annually after 30 years. That's according to estimates by Charleston Mayor William Cogswell. About half of that would go to local schools. The county and city would each get between 12 million and 15 million, according to the city's projections. So going back to the school board vote, which happened on Monday, they did approve the TIF, as I said, but it was a 5-4 vote, and it was a long faction lines. If you remember, the majority on the board, 5 of them, are Moms for Liberty backed candidates. They tend to lean more conservative, and this board almost always votes together. The minority 4 tend to lean more liberal. They voted against it. So either way, county and school board voted to approve it. And so, like I said, it moves forward to city council. So not a done deal yet, but it's seeming like it's going in the direction that this TIF will be approved. And obviously, I'll keep you updated. I know this kind of background stuff can be a little boring. It's a little tough to understand, but these are the things that need to be worked out before you can start talking about the fun stuff, like what's going to open, what are they actually going to do with this development. But this is, important stuff about where money's going to go, where it comes from, who's going to be affected, and things like that. So I'll be sure to keep you posted. Got another update for you. The woman who's accused of reckless homicide and driving drunk in the death of a Folly Beach bride may actually end up going to trial this year. This is according to new court records. The Ninth Circuit Chief Administrative Judge, Deidre Jefferson, signed an order on October 30th to summon 300 additional jurors for jury selection in the case against Jamie Lee Komorowski. That's set to happen during the first week of December. Now, the 27-year-old is charged with reckless homicide and 3 counts of felony DUI after she allegedly slammed her rented black Toyota Camry into a golf cart that was carrying a newlywed couple away from their wedding reception. This happened back on April 28th of 2023. Komorowski, who reportedly tapped her brakes briefly before the crash, allegedly ran into the back of a cart that was carrying the bride, groom, and 2 other family members. She was going 65 miles per hour on a 25-mile-per-hour road, according to records. Ultimately, the cart was thrown about 100 yards. Samantha Miller, who was 34 at the time, died at the scene while still wearing her wedding dress. The tragedy led to a national outcry and actually some worldwide media attention as well. And all of that kind of explains why they're asking for 300 additional jurors, which is actually double the number of jurors who were called for a completely different trial that happened earlier this month. So clearly they know that there's going to be a lot of people, especially in this community, that know this story and the media coverage behind it, and have probably already made up their minds, you know, about this case. So it certainly makes sense that they're casting a wide net, trying to make sure that they find jurors who can be impartial for this trial. For those who don't remember, Komorowski was actually released from jail in March of this year, but it was placed on house arrest, and she has all sorts of different restrictions. But she was released after prosecutors were unable to meet a court-imposed deadline to bring her to trial this spring. So you may remember, like, she was not given a bond, but was going to be allowed to bond out if trial didn't go, wasn't scheduled by a certain date. That date came and went, and so she's been on house arrest ever since. But yeah, when it looked like this might get pushed sometime into next year, we might actually have this trial starting in December. And I'll, of course, again, be sure to keep you updated. All right, some fun news. The High Water Festival is coming back as expected in 2025. The 2-day celebration of music, food, and libations this week announced that they'll be back at North Charleston's Riverfront Park on Saturday, April 26th and Sunday, April 27th, 2025. So mark your calendars if you tend to go to that festival. Now, the lineup has not been announced yet, nor have any ticket details. Those will both be announced at a later date. The festival organizers for the festival said they are expected to announce the lineup on Tuesday, November 12th. So not too far away from finding out who will be performing next year. But this will be the first year that Shovels and Rope, the local duo who created this festival and had a major hand in planning it through the years, they will not be on the lineup, and they are no longer associated with the festival. You may remember last year, after the conclusion of the event, they did make an announcement that they were no longer part of it. They just felt it had grown so much, and they were starting to see some things that they didn't like about festivals. Now, that's behind the scenes stuff, and that's going to happen. You see these huge festivals, you know, and what it takes to put on and the money you have to bring into it. And so that was essentially the reason for, separating themselves from the festival. But I would still expect a fun lineup. Just won't have shovels and rope, unfortunately, for the first time. But I'll, excited to see on November 12th who will be coming to North Charleston next year. Some more good news. Earlier this week, it seemed like the annual Light the Lake event. That's an event that the Charleston Parks Conservancy put on at Colonial Lake for, I think, 5 years, or no, I'm sorry, 8 years leading up to this year. They had basically said it's really difficult for them as a nonprofit to put on this big event. It costs lots of money, logistics, et cetera, et cetera. And it just seemed like putting on this large scale free event with very limited sponsorship support was going to be too tough for them. But thankfully, the city stepped in, and I don't know exactly what they did to help alleviate those issues, but they made an announcement this week, just a handful of days after it seemed like the event was going to be canceled, that Light the Lake will indeed be back. It's the ninth annual celebration, and it's going to take place on December 6th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at Colonial Lake, of course. So the Conservancy and the city of Charleston are partnering on this, and somehow the city was able to help them with it. Again, I don't know the exact details of it, how exactly that's going to take place, but the good news is the event is going to happen. For those who've never attended or don't know much about it, this year's event is going to, basically people just gather around the lake. Number one, it's just a nice community event. There's also food trucks and all sorts of different, things at each corner of the lake. They call them activations. So they can be any number of things, maybe a contest, maybe vendors. It could be different things. And then it's called Light the Lake because the mayor, there will actually light the lake, quote unquote, at 6 p.m. And there's a tree. It's not an actual tree. It's kind of like the quote unquote tree in Marion Square, where it's just a bunch of lights that look like a tree. That they light up, and it's in the lake and it looks really pretty, and yeah, so it's a fun community event, and thankfully it will be back. And you can get more details in the show notes. A longtime downtown restaurant is closed. Rutledge Cab Company, which had been downtown for 12 years, announced abruptly, really, on Monday that they would be closing after that day's lunch service. So they didn't even have like a, hey, it's your last chance to come in. We're closing on such and such date. That just on Monday, they posted on social media, hey, we're closing after lunch service today. Done. So they kind of came out of nowhere. But in any event, the restaurant, which was originally opened by actor Bill Murray, Charleston River Dogs co-owner Mike Veck, and partner Brad Krieger, like I said, they made that announcement on social media. But in addition to saying that the restaurant was closing, they did say a new concept is coming to the space. Now, there was really not a lot of details. So I don't know if this is a completely new team that's coming in, or if they are just changing the concept, whether it's all three of the owners, two of them, just one of them. Really, there are no details about what this new concept is. So something happened. Obviously, it seemed like it came up pretty quick. But Rutledge Cab Company is no more. But something is planned for that space, which was a former service station or gas station that was located at 1300 Rutledge Avenue. So obviously, I'm excited to find out what new concept can be coming here. Hopefully, it'll be a good one. But bummed to see. Granted, I didn't get to Rutledge Cab Company a lot, especially these last few years. I remember when it first opened, I went a few times, enjoyed the food those times that I went. I liked the space. So sad to see it go for sure, but excited to see maybe something new and even more exciting will be there. So we'll find out, and hopefully it won't be too much longer. But whenever that announcement is made, I'll be sure to let you all know. And finally, the 2024 Steeplechase of Charleston announced that they will be canceling the event due to poor ground conditions. For those who aren't familiar, Steeplechase of Charleston is a horse racing event that's held out in Hollywood, South Carolina. Not super far from Charleston. I think I've only been once. it was fun. It was something different to do. People are, some go all out and dress as if they're at the Kentucky Derby, the big hats and all that stuff. There's all sorts of vendors. It's family friendly. They have like a corgi race as well, or a bunch of corgis, are running. And then, of course, they have the horse races. It's kind of like if you see on NASCAR, they also have, people in the center of the track. So same thing here. They have like a grandstand that you could sit in, but a lot of people will hang out in the middle of the track where there's a bunch of different vendors. You could actually rent a space so you can, bring your car or whatever and tailgate in the middle of the field the whole time. There's like VIP tickets that you can get. Same thing, there'll be a sectioned off space for you with food and drinks and the whole thing. So something different, something interesting. But yes, they're canceling this year's event, which was supposed to happen on Sunday, November 10th. And they said they made the decision out of a deep concern for the safety of the equine and human athletes. So organizers said that there's, this prolonged drought in this region that we've been going through has left the ground overly hard, dry, and lacking suitable turf, which they say would create dangerous ground conditions for racing. So they reached out with the National Steeplechase Association, and they decided that this was going to be the best decision for everyone involved. Ticket holders, if you were someone who bought tickets, you have the option to request a full refund. You can also just transfer your ticket to next year, the 2025 event, or you can convert the purchase into a tax-deductible donation to Steeplechase of Charleston, which, by the way, a few years back, the Post and Courier, essentially took over this race, and the money was going to go towards helping them. They have like an investigative journalism fund. It's just a way for them to raise money to, be able to do different projects throughout the year that their budget normally wouldn't allow. So that is a bummer that they'll miss out on that money, because we need local journalists and we need to pay them well. And we need them more than we've really ever needed them, when it comes to people who actually live in the community and reporting on the news. So that's a bummer for sure, but hopefully enough people will transfer their ticket till next year, or just go with the, tax deductible donation route, so they won't lose too much. But again, regardless, they had to make the right decision to make sure the horses and the jockeys would be safe. So, Steeplechase at Charleston, if you're a fan of the event, you're going to have to wait till 2025. And that will do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio. Thank you so much for listening. I greatly appreciate it. I hope you all have an incredible weekend. Again, if you need plans, go to holycitycenter.com/calendar. And you can find out what to do over the next 3 days and beyond. Also, if you have a chance, I would love if you could rate, review, like, subscribe, whatever you can do with this podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Any kind of interaction with it, including sharing it with someone who may be interested. All that stuff helps boost its profile and get the podcast into more ears. You can also go to patreon.com/Holy City Center if you'd like to chip in and help offset some of the costs of doing a podcast, running a website. And that those folks, a big thank you to all of you who have done that in the past and continue to do so now. Speaking of thank yous, thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Soundsystem for producing this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio. And a big thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show. Have a great weekend. Monday I have an interview scheduled that I'll be recording over the weekend. I'm excited for it. Don't want to make the announcement in case something happens. It seems like every time I'm like, plan on this, if something gets canceled or postponed. So have an exciting interview scheduled for Monday. Can't wait for that to happen. I'm excited to talk to this person. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. If you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, like I said, do so. That way you don't miss any future shows. Regardless, if the interview happens or not, I'll be back with you on Monday. I'm already looking forward to it. But until that day, good night and good luck.